is the Revisionary Podcast with your host, Juan Carlos. The Revisionary Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Revisionary Podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Juan Carlos. If this is your first time listening, thank you. The way this podcast works is we bring on guests, usually comedians, who tell a nonfiction story about their lives in which they wish things had gone a little bit different. Afterwards, I give them an opportunity to tell the same exact story, except the second time, they can change any facts or details that they would like about the story. I'm actually really excited for our guest today, and her name is Kelly Taylor. The reason why I'm excited is because one of the things that I did in New York that I was really, really proud of is that I was looking for a way to put a little bit of money in the pockets of comedians, because comedy is one of those thankless things that we all do, and we do it out of passion. Like, it's 100% a passion project. Like, yeah, there are people who make money out of comedy, but it takes a long time. And also, to make back all the money you spend and invest into comedy sometimes takes a while. So I wanted to do my part, and I organized what I called an open mic competition. So basically, the way it worked is that I would just organize this for New York comics. You had to have been doing comedy for 5 years or less, and we would all pay money to participate. So everyone would pay $10, and I would sell tickets to the audience members that were coming. So audience members would pay $10, and I would put all of the money into a bucket. And then once we had the competition, we had judges or whatever, the judges would ultimately pick a winner, and whoever won would walk away with the money that we put in the bucket. So people were walking away with a lot of money, actually, for only doing a few minutes of comedy. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting. It was one of my favorite projects. It was 100% a passion project, and I'm really glad that I got to put it together. But that's actually how I met Kelly. I had not met her before, but I was reaching out, always looking for newer comics, and she came through, and she was phenomenal. So I'm glad that I had the opportunity to connect with her then, and I look forward to speaking to her on the podcast today. So without further ado, let me see if I can get her on the line. Hello, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you so much for coming on the Revisionary Podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
So you get to be the first to see it. We're doing some remodeling around the Revisionary Studios. If you look around you, it kind of looks like your own apartment,
Looks great.
Yeah. So for those of you guys who are listening out there, clearly she is not in my apartment. We are not physically in the same room. She is, in fact, in what I hope is her own apartment. I don't know. She might be a cat burglar. I have no idea.
No, I'm totally in my own apartment. I'm very jealous of your natural light, where my light is completely artificial. I'm over in New York City, but yeah, your space looks great. I love it.
Oh, thank you very much. So what have you been up to?
Oh, what have I been up to? Quarantine sort of, I don't know. I had a lot of ideas bouncing around, and I think about this a lot, how I feel like I might have had a mental breakdown if the whole world didn't have to come to a screeching halt. With quarantine and the pandemic, it kind of feels like the world is on training wheels. Okay. And I feel like I was so close to burnout in February of 2020. And then all of a sudden March came. Yeah, March came, and then it was like, oh, full stop, But, I took that time. I feel like I've been doing a lot of introspective work. And through that, I started a podcast, something that I always wanted to do. So I created a podcast back in January 2021 called I Feel Fat Today. And it's a podcast about insecurities. My biggest insecurities being my weight. I've always been a yo-yo dieter, so to speak. So it's just been ever present in my life through, dieting as a young kid, eating disorders throughout my, teens and 20s, and sort of looking at diet culture, but not just things that are fat centric, more insecurities in general. And we cover a few different topics, but yeah, so I Feel Fat Today is my podcast. And then I really just had a hankering to have a weekly show. And also in January, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to hop on the Zoom train. And I started a comedy show, a weekly comedy show called Everything Is All Right. And now I'm in the process of finding a venue to have it go from virtual to in person. But yeah, Everything is All Right comedy is our handle on Instagram. And it's just a great show with New York comedians. So, but yeah, other than that, just
I think that's a really amazing idea because it's something that I feel is very relatable. Like I can tell you, me personally, my weight is something that I've always struggled with. And the worst part about it is that I grew up playing sports. And I remember being in college, I was on the rugby team. And even when I was like playing rugby, I felt like I was fat. And I look back at pictures of myself then and I was in phenomenal shape. I don't know what was wrong with me. And I will say, even as recently as like maybe 2 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm so fat. And I was running and training. I was like, you know what? I look back, I was like, I wish I could look like that now. You know what I mean? I looked so good, but
totally. Yeah, I mean, even just through, it had been work that I'd been working on for months, but definitely through the podcast, I even noticed for myself, like looking back at old photos and I just want to smack that girl, back in 2015 in the face. Like, you really thought you were fat? Like, no, chill, Yeah. And just also like being okay and accepting ourselves for how we are. And it's cool because it's not just people with like weight, I don't want to say issues, but weight hang-ups that enjoy the podcast, because I talk about all kinds of insecurities. Like I had a few episodes about sexual insecurity because I grew up in a really religious schooling, and I had like these crazy abstinence only speakers come in and talk to us. So it was really fun to do those episodes. And it's crazy when you release an episode and all of a sudden people hit you up and they're like, I experienced the same thing. Like, oh my God, we all think we're original.
Did you go to Catholic school?
I did. Yeah. I grew up in Jersey. And so I grew up in like your typical Irish Catholic household. Yeah.
I asked because I'm listening to you talk and you're giving me very much I survived Catholic school vibes. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Because I too went to Catholic school. So I experienced that firsthand as well. I remember I just remember I don't know, like a lot of the feelings that you seem to describe are just consistent with how I felt when I was in high school specifically.
Yeah, totally.
But anywho, you're here now, we've both survived it. We've made it. It's in the past. But let's get excited because it's time for my favorite part of all of this, right? Where we get to chat. So, Kelly, the stage is yours. Go ahead and tell us your story.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So it was probably, now that I think about it, it was in 2016. It was like August or September. And now I live alone, but my roommate and I at the time, she's not just like a roommate that like you kind of don't like. She still is one of my best friends from college. And so we'd always go out together. And it just was a night where I truly just didn't feel like going out. But she had been out a little bit earlier in the day. And I was sitting at home doing nothing. So when she came back, she was like, come on, let's just go to the bar. It's just a bar that we always go to. And we're going to have a good time. So I said, okay, fine. So I got ready real quick. And that feeling when like you are like, I don't even know why I'm getting ready to go out, but I'm going because my friend is asking. So we go to the bar and have like just a fine time, it was a totally normal evening, but it just was a day where she ended up getting tired pretty early on in the night. So it was we were at the bar, just the two of us. We danced with a few guys, but didn't really like have anything memorable happen. And I'll never forget, we had 2 drinks each. and it was around 11:30 at night. And Drew said, let's call it an early night. I'm ready to head out. So I looked at her and I said, okay, I'm going to hit the bathroom. I'll meet you back here by the bar and then we'll jet. Fine. So the last thing I remember, I'm in the bathroom line. And then the next thing I remember is I wake up and I'm sitting in the bathroom stall on the toilet. And it was like really shocking to me because I was sitting there, my phone was on the floor, and like I remember sitting there on the toilet, my pants were down, and my hand was like sprawled out, and like my phone was on the floor, and I like immediately perked up. I'm like, that's so weird. So I really quickly got up. It was one of those stalls where it was a floor to ceiling door, and there were like the sink and mirror were all in the stall. So I washed my hands really quick and I run out because I think like I dozed off in the bathroom stall. I run out and then it just hit me like a freight train that it was the next morning and I was in the bar alone by myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I was like, my first thought was my mom is going to be so mad at me. That was my first thought. I've lived out of the house for years now at this point, but that was my first thought.
Right.
And and then my second thought was someone has trapped me here knowingly, and they're going to come out and harm me. Like I've watched a lot of horror movies as a kid and into adulthood. And so I just had this vision while I was standing in this bar the next morning at like 6 a.m. That this like person in a Michael Myers mask was going to come out and like with a machete.
Right.
So I ran to the front door of the bar and I pulled the door open and all of a sudden the alarm started blaring, but I couldn't leave because the gate was down.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I'm in a bar in Brooklyn and so I can't get out of this place. So I saw the gate was down and I was like, I was on the verge of a panic attack because I was so confused and like my head was throbbing. I felt like I was out of my body. And I wasn't even thinking about the fact that I had only had 2 drinks when I was out at the bar. And yeah, like I can handle my alcohol. Like I 2 drinks is like a very leisurely experience for me.
Right.
And so I hadn't even thought about that at that point. I just like my focus was getting out, but I was entirely locked in. I'm on the verge of a panic attack. So I call my friend and by the way, I totally forgot to mention this. When I'm looking at my phone, I'm having frantic texts from my friend who I was at the bar with.
And I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. So she was sending me these wild texts being like, first it started out normal, like, hey, where are you? Hey, you've been gone a while. Hey, what's going on? And then all of a sudden she had it in her head that I had met someone in the bathroom line and left with them without telling her, which is not a characteristic of mine. You know, don't get me wrong. Like I have no problem meeting people at bars, meeting men at bars, but like I've never once left the bar without telling my friend, you know?
Right.
Right. So, she ended up getting pissed because she always does this thing where she puts her keys in my bag. And I tell her all the time, please don't do that because what happens if we get separated? So she was totally locked out of our apartment. Yeah. And so she ended up like angrily texting me like over and over again, like, you're such a, you know, bad person.
Just saying all the worst imaginable things that she can think of, right? At any given moment. But I also,
So yeah.
like, I feel like that's understandable.
Yeah, no, I totally like, I understand her anger. I get why she was like, why would you leave like me like this? Like, I understand her anger in that moment. So that like also confused me. It just was like a lot being thrown at me at once. So, I don't know why, but like I called her right away, and because it was 6 a.m. and she had to scramble to find some place to stay, she ended up being able to stay at one of her friends' places, and she was just like, I guess like I called her when she was half asleep, so she was just like, I don't know what to tell you, and I was just like, I'm locked in the bar, like what do you want from me? And I hung up on her, but I get it. Like I called her when she was half asleep. She didn't even know what happened. She was apparently angry at me. And so,
you know what I would have loved? I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when she was telling her friend the story from her perspective with none of your input. Like, oh my God, she's the worst. She just left me. You know what I mean? Like imagine how that conversation went from both sides.
I can only imagine, honestly. She was like with a dude that I did not care about. So I did not care what story she was telling him about me. I truly did not care.
It was like, got it. I don't know why I assumed it was a woman. You know, that's bad on me to make assumptions.
No, honestly, to protect the innocent, I made it seem like it was just a friend, but it was a dude, you know, but good, you know, thank God she was talking to him at the time, because I don't know where she would have gone. I was pressured in the bathroom. So this is like exactly how my brain works. I fly so far under the radar. So I didn't call 911. I Googled in my panic state on my phone within this bar, wherever I am in Brooklyn, like Brooklyn Police Department, and called like the 917 number, because I didn't want to call the emergency hotline, because I'm like, isn't an emergency. Like, I just need someone to get me out.
Right. I mean, I would have done the same. I'm not going to lie to you.
I mean, I don't want to involve the cops if I don't have to, you know?
Right.
So, and bad enough, the alarm was blaring. So I'm like, the cops are going to come eventually, because someone thinks I'm breaking into their bar.
Right.
So I call like the 917 police number, and this woman on the phone is like, honey, you have to call 911. Like, this is an emergency situation. I can't do anything for you. And I was like, what? I don't want to call 911. She's like, you have to call 911. So I called 911, explained to them what happened, had to tell them I woke up in a bar, and they're like, okay, it's fine. Like, we're calling, like, the police will be there. And they came very fast. And you have to save the white woman.
You know what? I wasn't going to say it, but, you know, I thought it.
You got to call a spade. So, they ran and got me. I hear the police cars outside. It was one police car, 2 officers showed up. And then all of a sudden I hear fire alarms, like a fire truck was coming. And I was like, what is happening? And then the woman on the line was like, the 911 operator was like, we have to call the fire department to get you out. Like, the police don't have the ability to get you out of here. You know, like, I guess the fire department has like the big kahunas to like come in and like break or whatever. And again, my pragmatic mind was like, well, I don't want them to damage anything. I don't want anything to get broken. And all of a sudden I was able to get to this one door, and they were like, it was basically, there was 2 different doors. They could either break the lock on the one door, or they were going to have to like smash through the front door. And I was do whatever you can to not smash that door. And thankfully, one of like the more like grounded firefighters grabbed like a pair of like gigantic pliers and cut the chain on one of the doors, and they were able to open it up and get me out. And I ran out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm free. And I had to, talk to the police. And that's when I immediately felt like I was a criminal, because they were really not that nice to me. And,
Right.
to say I was in a fragile state is an understatement. I was like keeping it together, but also dying. And they were like asking how much I had to drink and if I had taken any drugs, and making me like run through the whole night. And I got the sense that they didn't believe me, that the last thing I remembered was being in the bathroom line. And then the next thing you know, I wake up in the bathroom stall. They were like, none of this makes sense. And
to be fair, I don't know that I would have believed you either. And also, I'll go one step further. I'm listening to your story, and I'm like sitting here in the back of my head. I was like, I feel like you're lucky they didn't cuff you the moment you walked out, because I feel like a lot of other people would have just been immediately cuffed.
But for what reason? I was stuck in the bar.
Because even though you didn't do anything wrong, right?
Right.
And I know that. You know that. But I also know you. You know what I mean? I have the benefit of doing that. But like, from an objective standpoint, if someone's locked inside a business when they shouldn't be,
right.
What else are you going to think?
Yeah. So I just was like, can I go home? And they had to call the manager of the bar, who was really mean to me, like so not nice. And I was just standing there like, okay, finish this report so I can like get out of here. And one of the firefighters saw me and they were like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't know what is happening to me. I am so scared right now. And thank God one of the firefighters was like, you did nothing wrong. Like, you were at this establishment and they left you in the bathroom. Like they can't run a business where one of their patrons is left in the bathroom. You're telling me they don't have a janitor come through and sweep up the bathroom? And in defense of the bar, in defense of the main reason why I wasn't found was due to the fact that I mentioned this before, but the bathroom stall was floor to ceiling, so it's not like you could see under or over. So, but still, like you need to like replenish the stuff in that stall, and you need to like clean the stall. So like someone had to be like banging on the door. Like there has to be a master key to the lock to get in. You know what I mean? So once the firefighter said that, I thought, oh yeah, like that's very true. And so the police asked me if I wanted an ambulance. And I said, no, I just want to go home. And they said, okay, you're free to go. And I was like, okay. And they're like, yeah, so just like call an Uber and go home. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, well, I guess you do have bigger stuff to deal with than taking me home. So
right.
I called an Uber and I got my ass home, and my roommate was there and she was like, what happened? And I was like, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm trying to like put the pieces of the puzzle together. And I'm like, and I feel out of my body right now. I've never felt like this. Like, I'm not hungover, but I felt like I was buzzing. And she was like, what are the chances that you were drugged? And I'm like, I didn't even think of that. I don't know. So I went online and I like Googled the symptoms I was having, because I had these like tingliness in my hands and feet, and I felt like just entirely spacey. And all of the symptoms matched up to GHB. And
what's that?
The date rape drug, GHB.
Oh, I've never even heard of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this as a personal win that I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's totally a win for you. I wish I didn't know what GHB was. And, and like, I at the time, I had known what it was, and I always knew that that was a threat. It just was one of those things where I thought, that'll never happen to me. You know, little old me, who would want to do that to me? And I was reading about like what happens to you on this drug, and it said that moments before blacking out, you'll feel a sense of euphoria. And I combed through that night like over and over and over again. And I realized that there were two guys at the bar that were like really hovering over my roommate and I. And her and I are just people that are like, we'll just get in the middle of the dance floor and have a great time. And I remember dancing and really having like an especially good time. I remember like physically feeling like I was having so much fun, and
right.
But not considering the fact that like 2 drinks really doesn't have that effect on me. I just was having fun. And I do remember the one guy like looking kind of, I don't want to say he looked sleazy, but like he definitely was like looking at my roommate and I when we were not at all interested in him. But we ended up dancing with him and his friend. And I have no proof. I have no idea. But if I had to bet, if I was a betting woman, I would suspect that they slipped something in one of our drinks, hoping to get one of us. Because I'm really glad that I had my friend there to vouch for me, where she was like, it was just so weird because everything was so normal. It's not like you were drunk in any capacity, never mind falling down drunk. Like you were totally like clear, and you said, I'm gonna hit the bathroom and then we're gonna go. And then all of a sudden you were gone. And it kind of hit me like, oh my God, I think I was drugged. And you know, I am not, like I said, I try not to be problematic. I have a very pragmatic sensibility to myself. And so, you know, I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't get any sort of testing, like a drug test done or anything to find out. And so I wouldn't know if I was or not, but I can only go on the feeling, like, you know, I can only go on what I can piece together from the night. And, so yeah, but it was, I think the thing that sucked the most than the actual waking up in a bar the next morning was how the residuals of that. You know, I had been dating is a strong word, but I had been dating this one guy for a few months, and
right.
He was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And then a few days later, it was maybe a week or two later, he called me when he was wasted one night and was calling me, like, I was telling me I was such a whore and I was such, you know, like, you're so dirty. I can't believe you would get so fucked up that you would fall asleep in the bathroom. And I was like, why are you saying this to me? Like, nothing about that was intentional. Like, I promise you, I didn't go out and get that drunk. Like, this just happened to me. And it was very, that was very, very hard. And the other thing that was really difficult to deal with from the fallout of I'm just going to say being drugged. I don't even feel the need to say potentially being drugged, because I do believe, I know my truth.
Right. No.
I do believe that that's what happened. So having had a situation where, you know, I'm placed in a vulnerable situation where someone was trying to hurt me, I mean, I truthfully am so thankful. I do think that in terms of, like, if I had to be drugged, it kind of happened in the best way possible, because I wasn't all of a sudden able to be hurt because I was locked in a bathroom stall. You know, like, that guy could have came who did drug me,
looking for you,
come and find me, you know? And but what's really difficult was after the fact was I didn't, obviously, I'm not like telling people about this, but anyone that I did confront or not confront, but confided in about it,
inform them, yeah,
to find support from, having people, I gotta say, mostly dudes. I didn't have really any women question me on this, but dudes being like, were you really drunk, or did you get, like, were you really drugged, or were you just really, really drunk? And that really hurt, because it's like, it hurts to not be believed, especially when, like, I mean, I'm not lying. Like, I'm telling you exactly what happened. So,
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and assume, I'm just going out on a limb here, that you probably would prefer to sleep in your own bed rather than the floor of a bathroom stall.
Oh my God.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Completely. Literally the worst thing that, never mind waking up in a bathroom stall, having the angry text from my friend was like really what I was like, oh no, like I don't want her mad at me. Like I would do anything to avoid that, but absolutely not. Like, no, that is not my first choice. So yeah, so that was crazy. And I'm fine now. I am like, that was almost going on 4 or 5 years since that happened. I'm a completely different woman now, but I had soon after, I ended up having a suicide attempt. And I think that it was like from that situation, but it is what got me into therapy. And if it wasn't for therapy, I would be there's no way I would have started comedy. Like, there's no way that I would have the life that I have now if it weren't for the therapy because I hadn't done therapy before that. And it, so that's what got me in there.
I will say, first and foremost, I'm very thankful that you are here with us today.
Me too.
I'm glad that, that you found someone that you could speak with and could help guide you. I say this all the time on this podcast. I've never been to therapy personally, so I don't know how it works, but I assume that there's some guidance involved in the therapy process.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Totally. No, therapy. I had never been before. And I don't see the same therapist now, but I loved her very, very much. And she was someone that would try to like push me and like really push me out of my comfort zone. Like when I told her that I wanted to do comedy, but I was like too afraid to go to open mics, like she would try to push me to go. And then eventually she learned like pushing me is not the way to connect, like get through to me. I really need to be like suggested something and then come to the realization on my own. And I was able to learn a lot about myself through that. So, I mean, I probably would have ended up in therapy anyways, even if that hadn't happened. But I'm really thankful that I got there.
And okay, so let me ask you this. Now that you've told your story and we've had an opportunity to listen to it, I'm actually going to go ahead and hand you the stage right back and say, go ahead and retell us your story.
Okay, so I can retell the story where I don't think that if I'm retelling the story, I'm struggling with the idea if I would have gone to the bar that night.
Okay.
Because it's easy for me to be like, oh, well, I'll retell the story by just not going to the bar. I would have stayed at home. I would have gone to bed early and none of this would have happened. But, you don't know, like it could have happened another time, And
sure.
So in retelling the story, I would have gone to the bar. I 100% would have clocked the fact that the one guy that was being really, really inappropriately like pushy with my friend and I would have pushed back on him more and being like, we're good, instead of being so polite, because I think that's one of my downfalls.
Let me ask you something, actually. I'm going to back up here for a second. Now, I don't mean to stereotype, right?
Right.
But traditionally, whenever I go out with any of my female friends, they tend to go to the bathroom in pairs. Why didn't you guys go to the bathroom in pairs? Is not something you do?
That's such a good question. I don't do that. Like, I always pride myself on being independent. And so
Sure.
it's not that I was going to the bathroom alone on a point of pride. I don't want to inconvenience anybody. So if my friend didn't have to go to the bathroom, and it had been a place that we go often, so
you felt safe.
I felt totally fine. It was like being a place I constantly go to. But that is such a funny question because it's so true. Women do go to the bathroom in pairs. And any of my other friends, if I was there with, they would have insisted, coming with me. Or if they wanted to go to the bathroom, they would have been like, well, you just come with me, that kind of thing. And it's really funny because, and again, being with my roommate, we go out all the time. So it's just like status quo for me to be like, oh, I'm going to hit the bathroom and come back.
Yeah.
Like I never
be right back.
I've always, it's silly to say, oh, I've always been independent, but like, no, truthfully, I always have been. And honestly, like even since that experience, I haven't been like, will you come to the bathroom with me? I'm still very much like, I can handle this.
So now you're retelling the story, you said you would have been a little bit more firm, right? Mm-hmm. So you're firm. What happens next?
So, I mean, who knows? I don't know if I would have gotten drugged or not, which is so weird because I am so adamant. I've always been adamant, even since college, about like being careful with drinks, like walking around with my hand over the cup, yelling at my friends if they ever like leave a drink unattended, like even putting it on the bar and like turning their head. And they say, oh my gosh, you're being paranoid. And so even my friends were like, it's really ironic that you would be someone that this would happen to, because you are like I'm like the stereotypical mom of the group,
Right. And you're careful.
Very careful, watching for other people, holding my friends' hair backs. I mean, not to say I haven't had my nights of recklessness,
sure,
but people, I have friends told me, like, tell me, like, oh, we look to you to like be the mom. I sort of get everyone from bar to bar when we're bar hopping. People, it's sort of like follow the leader, and I'm the leader, and so. It's weird that it even happened to me in the first place, but that just goes to show like how easy it can be, even if even maybe at that time I wasn't especially careful, but I usually am, and it just takes one time of not paying attention. So if I were retelling the story and I still had been drugged, I think I would have had, I know that if I could go back and redo the whole situation, I would have had so much less fear, maybe zero fear, that I had done anything wrong in this situation. Because I think that was what was hardest for me to deal with and overcome, with being mistreated by the guy I had been dating, where he's calling me a slut because of what happened to me. People in my life asking me about if I had drank too much, being able to be like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm telling you what happened. And I, in my normal life, I am like, I don't want to say anything that's controversial. I, in theory, stand with the belief of like believe all women, but I also believe in like due process. So I'm not saying if I'm spouting like whatever I'm saying, people should believe me, but it's like, why would I make that up? You know what I mean?
So, now that this is all happened, I want to say thank you for joining us on the Revisionary podcast, and thank you for being willing to open up and share your story with us. I'm sure the Revisionaries will appreciate it, because I'm sure you're not the only person out there who's had this experience. So hopefully another person can connect and understand that they too, like you, are 100% worth it.
Yeah, I have to tell you, this has been such a nice conversation, and I'm really excited to. Everything I say sounds lame, but I mean it. Like, I'm really excited to connect with the revisionaries and tell you guys this, and you're right. Plenty of people have experienced this, unfortunately, but you're not alone. And if you're struggling with, mental health, if you're really feeling horrible, like, there's people out there.
So we have two traditions on this podcast. The first is we like to highlight a charity or an organization at the end of every episode. Do you have a charity or an organization that you're passionate about?
Yeah, so the charity that I want to talk about is called Care for the Homeless. Care for the Homeless meets the medical, mental, and behavioral health needs of people experiencing homelessness. So it's a resource for homeless individuals that a big reason why I live in New York. Homelessness is rampant. I know all America has a homelessness issue, and I think that is directly tied to mental health. For obvious reasons, I try to be a mental health advocate, but for those that are experiencing homelessness, it is such an crucial need, mental health care.
Okay. The second tradition that we have is we like to ask our guests to please share a quick childhood story that puts a smile on their face or just generally makes them feel warm inside. We like to end on a positivity note. I
love it. Okay, a positive story from my childhood. Okay. This is so funny. So I'm from New Jersey, but...
I'm sorry to hear that.
What?
Nothing. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I'm from Jersey, and so I'm from Central Jersey, but bordering north. Like, I'm not from South Jersey. I know people.
Oh, okay.
When they think of South Jersey, they think of like the sticks, and like kind of like people that are like real Southern. I'm not from that area, but my family just like we're great people, but we have some like trashy tendencies. So my dad had a big Ford truck with a big like 8-foot bed. And it was one day over the summer. It was so hot that my dad filled up he put a tarp down in the truck and filled it with water. And my brothers and I used it as a swimming pool. And he drove down our street, and we were like, oh, it's like a wave pool. Meanwhile, we're bouncing around out of the truck in the Ford F-250 swimming pool. And that was such just like a fun. My mom worked a lot, and so I spent equal time with my parents, but my mom was working a lot, and so a lot of time it would be like hanging out with dad, and that was his idea of a good time. But I have such a good memory of that.
That is such a great story. Before I let you go, I know you kind of already did this, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to give us any last words and tell us where we can follow you.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing. You can follow me on Instagram at Hello, This Is Kelly on Instagram. You can follow me on TikTok and Twitter at Modern Goth Girl. You can follow my comedy show, my weekly comedy show on Instagram at Everything Is All Right Comedy. And then finally, you can find my podcast, I Feel Fat Today, on Spotify. We're working on getting on Apple Podcasts. So right now, Spotify is the best place to find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Kelly. And thank you for sharing your story with the Revisionaries.
Juan Carlos, this has been so fun. Thank you.
The Revisionary Podcast.
Okay, so that story is, wow. First and foremost, let me start here. I'm really grateful that Kelly is okay. That is very, very, very scary. I cannot even imagine how I would react if that had happened to me. Also, I feel like she's very fortunate that things ultimately worked out in her favor, because that could have gone sideways in so many different ways. But I'm really glad that she's okay. I'm glad she shared the story, because that was interesting. I really, really enjoyed that story. So that was pretty awesome. But, you know, I want to, as always, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And, you know, thank you to the Revisionaries for keeping me going and for keeping up with this project. You guys are the best, and this is always a blast to do. And as always, thank you for listening.
This is